What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and finally Cinematic Tools has been updated to work with the latest Battlefront patch, which means I can start recording the map guides again. The program I use for these cinematics has been broken for around a month or so, but the creator finally got around to updating the tools, so here we are with another map guide for you guys. Today we're going to be covering Endor, which is probably up there with one of my favourite maps in the game, and we're going to be taking a look at the attacking side, which of course is the Rebel Alliance. This map would have to be one of the better looking maps in the game. It really does have that Star Wars feeling about it, and for anyone who loves the original trilogy movies, I'm sure this map would have to be up there with your favourites as well. So getting straight into the first phase, as the Rebels, you'll spawn at the back of the map here, and you'll have 3 objectives to take out in the first phase of the map. The first, and definitely the hardest to take, is this one here called the computer station, and this can often be a real struggle to take if your teammates aren't working together well. The next one is the fuel station, which is out here to the left, and this one's probably the easiest to take out of the 3. The last one is the walker bay, which is over here right underneath the walker, and while this is hard to take sometimes, if you and your team all push at once, it's definitely not impossible by any means. So usually I'd give some tips for which class is the best to use for each map, but honestly on Endor I think you can just about get away with using any class that you want, so I definitely recommend to stick with your best or most comfortable class setup for all phases of the map. Now, I usually start off over on this right side of the map. Most of your teammates are going to go straight to the center objective, and if too many go there, it ends up being a little bit too hard to take, so I generally go for the one of the side objectives, and usually the right side suits me the most. The reason this is a good objective to push for is because it's probably the last objective the enemy is going to expect you to attack, so you can often catch them off guard if you rush it straight away. I usually try not to push too hard at the start. I find that sitting back and trying to pick off a few enemies before going for the objective is definitely the best way to go about it. This just allows a bit more time for some of your teammates to push up and help you as well, and once there's a bunch of teammates there, it's going to be a whole lot easier to take the objective. Now, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I thought I'd cleared enough enemies to go and take the objective, but as you can see, I did decide to push in just a little bit too early, and it ended up with me dying in a situation that I really couldn't afford to die in. The same principle applies to the objective on the left side of the map. If you've rushed this side straight away, then you shouldn't push straight for the objective, but you should do the same as the other side and just try and take control of the area first. So as you can see in this footage, I was lucky enough to have a teammate come along with me, so rather than fighting over the objective, I let him take it and decided to set up a bit of defense for anyone coming up the hill. This is exactly what I mean when I say you should be playing as a team. Rather than leaving him alone and pushing to another objective, you're much better off to just stick close by and make sure no one can get a line of sight on him. He did end up getting taken out by a sniper, but he managed to get most of the job done, which left me to be able to stroll in and finish the last little bit to take control of the objective. The best part about taking out the fuel station and the walker bay first is that it just usually distracts the enemies from heading into the computer room, which gives your teammates a much better chance of taking that objective as well. Now, once you've managed to take out all 3 objectives, you'll actually take control of the walker, and your next objective is to get it all the way through the forest and into this compound without it being destroyed. We're going to go into a bird's eye view here to give you a better view of the map, but for some reason the trees won't render at this distance no matter how high I make the settings, but you can still get a good idea of what's going on regardless of that. So this dotted line here is where the AT is going to travel. It will walk on its own, however you can still get inside by spending 400 battle points, and you can deal a fair bit of damage with it, as I'm sure you can imagine. These areas marked in blue are where most of the action is going to happen, and even though this is where everyone's going to be, I'd probably have to say this is the safe zone of the map. The area where the walker goes, as you can see marked in red, is what I call no man's land, and unless you're quickly sprinting across to the other side, then I'd definitely recommend staying out of this area if possible. If you spend too much time down in no man's land, then you'll find quickly that everyone loves to patrol this area and make sure no one's hanging around the feet of the walker. Not only that, but it seems to be that every hero, enforcer and also speeder bike spends the majority of their time patrolling back and forth along this area, so I definitely have to recommend that you stay out of here if you can. There will be ion disruptors scattered around the blue areas, which allows the Empire to damage the stolen walker and ultimately lower how many respawns your team is allowed, so if you see anyone with a disruptor, then make sure you do all you can to take them out. So for this phase of the map, the main thing you want to remember is that you shouldn't stray too far from your teammates or the walker. Don't get me wrong, it definitely is a good idea to try and push back the enemy if possible, but if you're straying too far from your teammates, it's so easy to be taken out as the enemy can pretty much show up from any direction, and it is really hard to keep track of them because of the forest. One really good strategy I've found is to actually head to the Ewok huts up in the trees and make your way around the catwalks, but I'd only recommend doing this if your blaster can do well at longer range. If you're playing as something like a heavy, then it can be still a good idea to come up here and put down an ion turret. But once you've done that, it's definitely best to head down and continue your fight down on the ground. From up here you can get a really good line of sight on your enemies, and even though there's not too much cover at all along the catwalks, if you stick close to the huts then you should be pretty safe. Another thing you can do from up here is to actually jump down on top of the walker as it goes underneath you. This footage here is actually the worst display I could have given you because I died instantly, but if you can get onto the walker unnoticed then you can deal some damage from up here, and if you do get shot at then you can simply fall off the side and you won't take too much fall damage. Now, as you get a little closer to the final objective, I generally tend to stick to the right side of the map as it kind of allows you to sneak around the side of the map without being seen. And if you can get yourself onto this area you're seeing on screen now, then you can create a pretty big distraction for the rest of your teammates to push up as well. Not many enemies will expect you to be right in their spawn, and since most of them push to the other side of the map anyway, majority of them will just run the other direction without ever knowing you're there. I usually like to try and pick off a few enemies if I can, and then once the area seems safe I like to push over to the other side of the map and try and take out a few Imperials from behind to lighten the workload for the rest of my teammates. Once you push to the last checkpoint of the second phase, then this phase is all but over. This area of the map is pretty self-explanatory, so I won't go into too much detail, but the only thing I do need to mention is that you should still stay away from the center of the map whenever possible. The middle area is just far too open and you're going to get picked off by snipers over and over again. And you do also need to remember that you have a walker on your side, so there's no need to patrol the middle section when the walker can easily handle that on its own. Your best bet is to just stick to the sides of the compound as you can see by the dotted lines, and just try and take out as many enemies as you can before you push into the third and final phase. So this last phase only has one capture point, and while that may sound easy, you can see how tight this final area is. So honestly, this is probably one of the harder objectives to capture on any map in the game. Again, this phase is pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go into it too much. The only real objective is to get into this area that you see on screen now and try and capture the sector. For this phase, I definitely have to recommend either the heavy or officer classes. Playing as a heavy helps a lot due to the added health and extra explosives, and playing as an officer can really benefit your teammates so long as you're making sure to buff their health before they head into battle. If you head around the side corridors, you can get onto the upper level as you can see here, and this level definitely seems to be a lot safer for obvious reasons. It does mean that you can't help capture the objective, however you're going to be of much more use to your team if you're playing the Slayer role and trying to clear the room of enemies. Not only that, but if your teammates do need help down on the ground level, then you can easily just jump off the sides and give them a hand. So that's going to be it for this map guide, guys. Hopefully some of these tips helped you out, and if it did, then make sure to leave a like down below. Now that the cinematic tools are updated again, I'm going to be smashing out these map guides. So if there are any specific maps you want to see me cover first, then make sure to let me know down in the comments. Or you can join my Discord server to have a chat with me and everyone else and let me know which maps or heroes you'd like to see a guide for. If you are new to the channel, then feel free to subscribe for more of these videos. And make sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.